What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rest Rounds. I am Eric, and this is Adam.
Adam.
Yeah, it's Adam. He was just promoting his book, and I said I'm not even recording, so wait. Here we go. What is it called? Shifting Schmear?
Shifting Gears. I can't read it on my screen because it's
so it's not backwards. About bagels?
No, it's not. And you got to be careful when you look this book up because I didn't vet this name out very well. I mean, the name was great because it's about my story of overcoming addiction and going to the triathlon world championship. So the bike gears, shifting gears, it's perfect. But apparently there's some kind of raunchy books out there that are a shifting gear series. So I'm not the first one that comes up on Amazon, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So if you do find it, look up Shifting Gears by Adam Hill, and it should come right up.
Right on. Well, that's good to know. I'm gonna have to check that out to see what interesting titles arise. Funny fact about that before we get into our topic, which is starting something new, especially in the world of physicality, because it is a very difficult area for us to get into, especially in a technological world after a couple of years of really being a technological world. But I was part of your support team in Shifting Gears, and it makes me laugh every time I see it because Adam would give me some finalized thing and say like this A or B. And he always picked the opposite of what I picked for all design and all names. And I was like, is that what you use me for? Is like, well, if that's what Eric likes, I'm going the other way. Subsequently, my wife always picked the correct one.
Did that really happen? So I actually chose the opposites of what you put out there?
Oh, yeah. Wow. And then I would explain why I liked it. And you're like, that's beautiful.
Oh.
And then I'm like, oh, well, I guess it wasn't that beautiful.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, I'm a dick, man. Jeez.
Well, sorry. The sign of a good friendship is where you can disagree and still be friends. Just like my wife and I were brought together through the conflict of book cover art.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you do know. I mean that is important. I one of the biggest fears I have is the fear of confrontation. I know, which is silly, but especially, and I mean, martial arts help with that. Because at least that physically you have some more advantage on that. But but the idea of confrontation is hard for me. So it's like whenever I disagree, it's like, I'm sorry, did I hurt you? I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So bad.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But that is confrontation. Like I think that word, and this does factor into this physicality thing because conflict, disagreement, confrontation, they're all flavors of the same thing. And it's tension. It's, the rams butting heads, whether it's logical debate or it's literal arguing leading into a fist fight, and I thankfully, since I've gotten sober and not gone to the bars, my fight in person rate has dropped about 100%. I find that I can really limit. It's not like the world is ready to attack me. It's really putting myself in positions to not be drunk and stupid and then get into stupid fights. And somehow I just don't get punched nearly as often as I used to.
Yeah. It's interesting how sanity starts with not being drunk and stupid. I mean, it's a good starting point to be at least a good baseline. Okay. Yeah. Whatever I'm going to do, wherever I'm going to go forward from here, not being drunk and stupid is an important one. And I say that with a little bit of humor, but for those of us who have lived some of our lives drunk and stupid and not being able to control it, it's not an easy thing to master. So
no, it's not, because there's a lot of conflict in the recognition of that even as a problem. People will talk to me now, are you an alcoholic? And I'm like, I don't really put words around it, but I was an alcohol abuser. Like, absolutely. I didn't feel like I had some of I did. It's weird because I never went to AA, and we put these labels on ourselves, and I wasn't I didn't abuse alcohol enough to be an alcoholic or whatever. But the fact is, the conflict came in two ways, primarily through hiding it and through my wife telling me I had enough at a given event or even in a month or whatever, and me getting really upset about, how dare you tell me how many I can and can't have? I'm going to keep drinking, and it was like, that wasn't a grown up response because it's a beer.
Yeah.
I don't need 6. I don't even need 1. So for me to be like, I'm here and I want more. And if I don't get more, then I'm not happy. And for that to be a fight indicated to me, absolutely, there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
that's hard to accept.
It is. It is really hard to accept. And I know I've kind of taken us maybe down a tangent that wasn't on the topic of what you wanted to talk about. But yeah, it's hard.
No, but it is relevant because every one of us has a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel in at least some way that struggle is solvable through physicality. And that is what we're talking about, is starting something new, starting something physical. It's
Mm-hmm.
great to have something intellectual. It's important to have something that stimulates your mind and feeds your mind, but we also have to move our bodies. It's, my whole premise is we own three things in our life, and it's our mind, our body, and our story. How we use our mind and our body writes that life story. So what story are we writing? What story do we want to write? And in my sobriety, my physicality came after that. I wasn't able to be physical. I worked out P90X, like that kind of stuff when I was drinking. And, that was fine, I guess. It didn't do anything for me emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Not until I got into triathlon did I finally get to see, like, whoa. And so, what I want to hit on first is that idea of starting something new. When
Mm-hmm.
you really don't have an understanding, you just maybe know, maybe each of us can kind of share where we were. And I'm fast forwarding past P90X, past weightlifting, because that was really my only form of adult exercise. But for me, and then I want you to share yours, place you were when you first really went into physicality. And I
Yeah.
think both of us might have been triathlon. But when I was in film school, I was, I'd gained weight. I was a dad, and that whole shtick about, the dad bod and all that was real, but it was uncomfortable to me, not because of what I saw in the mirror, because I really didn't see it. It was my endurance level, my pain, my discomfort, and then looking back at wanting to be in the military again, and losing that sense of, purpose and what was it and how can I have it in my life. And I'm like, oh, physicality, I like being physical and fighting. How can I do that now? Triathlon, blah blah blah. Let's just try it. Why? Because it's something that always interested me.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, it was always something that interested me, and never did it, but it was always a curiosity. My mom gets me this book one time. It was like How to Train for Your First Triathlon. And I was like, always had it on the shelf. And then I met someone who had done an Ironman. I saw Miranda Carfrae in 2014 on NBC Sports come back after a 12 or 14-minute deficit on the marathon and overtake. And it was like this inspiring, amazing thing to watch. And the way it was edited, it was perfect, inspiring. I watched it so many times training for my sprint,
Mm-hmm.
but that was how I got into it. And once I stepped into that arena and just said, hey, I'm putting a calendar date of this, and this is my sprint triathlon, after some research and some community gathering to figure out how to do this sport, that's where I started to make my realizations. But that's how I got into it, was a level of discomfort, dissatisfaction, and knowing I wasn't happy with being so winded walking to and from class. So
Yeah.
how about you?
Yeah. So for me, we have very similar stories. I think we could probably call this episode from P90X to whatever. Yeah, I was a P90X guy too, and I was drinking. I think that's just like I liked fitness programs with an expiration date.
Mm.
I mean, because that was like, to me, it was like, okay. And this was something that was more of an epiphany to me after I got into triathlon, which was, that I realized that, most of us achievement oriented, like, fitness is important. Like, we want to make sure there's an achievement that we want to get, whether it's something superficial and lame, like six-pack abs, like, hey, I want to get six-pack abs, which, by the way, still never had. And or it's something like achieving like an Ironman World Championship or something like that. So when I was doing P90X, I felt like, okay, well, basically the achievement is 90 days. I'm done with the 90 days, and there's my achievement. Not very compelling. And I think when we do that, we keep falling into this vicious cycle of, like, kind of relapse and, all these kind of different things. So there's a big old shame spiral that I was going down there. But for me, it was really what shifted for me was the fact that I had a year of sobriety. That seemed like such a big deal to me, because in my life, I had never in my life had a year of sobriety. I never thought that it was possible for me. And it was triathlon that I wanted to get into at that time, because many years earlier, I remember I was sitting at the Royal Kona Hotel, sitting, that's about, that's the iconic landmark that if you watch the Ironman World Championship, you see that hotel off in the distance. It kind of looks like a ship kind of thing, and it just sits off in the distance as people start swimming. And I didn't know this at the time, but that was that landmark. But this was about 2006. In September, I had about 9 months of sobriety, and it was the longest stint of sobriety that I had. And it's also where I broke my sobriety, because during that trip, I kept on thinking to myself, how can I manipulate my way into a drink? And I remember that so vividly. That was like the thing. 400 yards away from where the healthiest, fittest people in the world were about to achieve their biggest dream possible, I was about to descend back into 6 more years of hell.
Yeah.
And I thought it was paradise, but I was forcing myself back into hell. So literally 2 months later, I would learn what the Ironman triathlon was. I started watching it. I saw it on television. I just saw the sweeping views of Hawaii, and it was just a random Saturday, and I was just laying on the couch, basically just like, drinking myself into oblivion. And then, because I broke my sobriety, so I was back into my old habits. And I remember seeing all of these folks like finishing this race, doing this amazing thing, swimming, biking, and running. The gravelly voice of Al Trotwig, who is the announcer, 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, 26.2 mile run. And I saw it, and then there was this like moment of like, holy shit, that would be so amazing if I could do something like that. And that excitement rose up. And the second that happened, fear rose up. It was like, you can't do that. Look at you. You're fucking alcoholic. You smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. You're doing you're crazy. You can never do that. That's just go back to drinking beer and feeling sorry for yourself. And I remember listening to my brain on that day. And that's the moment that like it just went away, but the seed was planted so that when I was in a healthier spot, a year of sobriety, and and over the course of that year of sobriety, my brain was filled with sober people that were saying, wait for a year of recovery before you make any major life changes. Wait a year. Don't make any major life changes in the first year. I was thinking to myself at a year of sobriety, damn, I need to make a major life change. And those, I just had these conditions with an empowered mindset and just this idea of what can I do that's like a big change. My physical health came in and I'm like, oh yeah, that Ironman triathlon thing. So how do I sign up for the Ironman World Championship? And that I just typed in the stupid query into Google, and the rest is history, because now I had a compelling achievement that I was going after. And that's one of the primary things that helps us to like stay disciplined with something is there's this compelling achievement oriented focus that we can go after, and like a sincere belief that's rooted in our previous achievements and in those points of reference. So that's kind of what got me into that fitness journey, or into something new, was like these points of reference for the past, the seeds that had been planted, and something that was compelling enough, that was aligned with my values, and that gave me what I called the oh shit factor, that point where excitement and fear rise up in equal measure. Yeah. So long story, but yeah.
It's a lot of points that I want to touch on, actually. I mean, it's a great story. And if you want to read more about it, Shifting Gears by Adam Hill. We already talked about it at the top of the hour. See, it all comes circling back. So you mentioned something. We have very similar stories. P90X. I wanted to circle back to that first, because in some ways, I wrestled in high school for a year. I did little league stuff, physical. Yeah. Went in the Army, that was physical. But after the Army, that was the only thing I did that was anything physical like that. And I found myself with that expiration date that you're talking about. And the thing that I think I liked about it was it did have an expiration date. We have the 90 days, which is, essentially 3 months, which is like a quarter. And we know that is the best way to have a goal, is set it into quarterly chunks, because 90 days you don't get burned out necessarily. You can do something for 90 days, then shift that goal and try something else. And I think there's value in that, even when you're doing the same thing, with being able to shift it. With P90X, doing that same program over and over again, not my thing. Doing Ab Ripper X, the same DVD over and over 3 times a week or whatever, with the same jokes, the same, I just, Ripper X, and I'm like, oh, here he comes, what is that walk? Is, like, so
Right.
and then you're not really engaged mentally with the why you're doing it. It's kind of like a weird experience at that point for me. But the thing that I liked about it was I could bail out after 3 weeks. I could take a month off and I could go back to it. And I knew it was going to work me out. So there's this level of consistency or security that is important in that. It's the same reason I watch the same movies over and over again, because there's something secure in it, but you don't have that variety either. And that's where the failure and the quitting came in, is that gave me variety. I'm going to go off and do something else, but I always have this security in P90X to come back to, and I can work my body, instead of finding the thing that really hooks me. What really like triathlon gave me 4 years of hook, or 3 years of hook, or whatever it is, and instead of 6 months or 9 months of a hook, and a loose one at that. But the thing that it brought up in me when you were saying it was this idea I had, because I used to play video games too. I still do on occasion. And there's this thing in video games where it gives you an incentive to try harder. And so you go through the game on easy and you finish it, victory, get that dopamine, success. And then it incentivizes you to go back and try it on medium if you went on easy. And if you do it on medium, now you get a special outfit, you get a special ability or whatever if you go back and then play it on hard. And you get another reward. So it continually, on these like RPG games or different games, will incentivize you to go up a difficulty level. And to me, that's a really appealing thing. And you get that in these other sports. You don't get it in P90X. To me, you have another program, you can go P90X 2 or Athlete X 2 or whatever, and then keep increasing. The problem with those for me was that I was never in shape enough to do the program to begin with. So I was constantly hurting myself, because it took me 5 years of my own weight training protocol to be able to make it through Jeff Nippard, I think it was, his body building, like whatever you want to call it. I forget what it's called, but his program. And I was really proud that I made it 5 weeks in that program, being able to do everything. It took me 5 years to do that 5 weeks, but I tried it with those programs and would bail after a week, just hurt. And then you get to something like jiu-jitsu, and now I have that incentivizing structure. You get a stripe. Well, now I'm going to get the second one. What rewards am I going to get for a second, a third, a fourth stripe, a blue belt, a brown? I get to level up over the next, God knows, minimum of 15 years if I take care of my body, and that puts me into my 50s. And building something like that, it incentivizes you to keep coming back, you to go to a competition. It unlocks a part of your mind, and now you can heal deep-seated issues that you've had since childhood that you didn't know you had. And unless you're in that physical arena, there's just like that, not just lifting weights, because you can get some of that. I've gotten many lessons from lifting weights, but not that visceral, deep, revelatory experience that you get when you're in conflict with somebody else and agreed upon combat. And triathlon was great too, because I got those lessons, but I didn't get all of the lessons.
Right.
So I just wanted to kind of pivot that way and have you reflect on that too, because I know you've gamed and there's different connections mentally that you get from that engagement. But how do you find that lesson comes to you in the different arenas, that, moving your mind and moving your body, and having both? Not, you have yes and on your shirt. And so it's like yes to gaming and yes to triathlon, yes to karate, yes to putting up my hands and punching.
Yeah, well, actually, it says ye sand. So I mean, like, so it's like
ye old
yeah, it's ye old. Yeah, it's like a yeah. So anyway, it's an old reference to the beach. But yeah, anyway, to your point. No,
thank you.
But but yeah, I think the point you make there is pretty powerful. That triathlon had this set of skills and things like that helped you to level up. And there are different races you could get to. And when you compare that to something like P90X, like, because I'm in karate now, I do karate. We're starting to get into kung fu, which is really, really fun, and it's cool. But the thing is that we have the belt system too, where we go through all the belts to get eventually to black. But every time you advance, you learn a new skill. You learn something new. There's new levels of achievement. Whereas P90X, I think it was like, it was ab ripper X 3 times a week, plyometrics, all these kinds of things that you did. Like every week, it was the same thing. You didn't really level up. You just did the same thing and hoped to see results in 90 days. because that's how long people's attention spans last. So that's like the nature of like the difference is that if you're leveling up your fitness, you're finding stuff that's truly achievement oriented where you can continuously grow, because the only way that you're going to find fulfillment is through continuous growth. If you're, regardless of what you do, if I start a business and I make $1 million in my first year, I'd be like, first year, it's like, woohoo, I made $1 million in my first year. And if every successive year I made $1 million, I'd be miserable by year 3, because it's like, or earlier, because it's like, okay, I'm not growing anymore. It truly is. If you're not growing, you're dying, or you're going stagnant. You have to find those areas in which you can continuously improve. And then when you reach that plateau, or that point, those are the pivot points in which you have to ask yourself this question very honestly. And this is a careful question, because when you hit those plateaus, you can either say, okay, this is the point at which I wanted to reach. I'm good now. I'm going to go move to something else that's going to lift me to the next level. Or you could just try to push through that plateau and make it to the next level. In triathlon, that happened with me when I did qualify for the Ironman World Championship. Did I tell you I made Kona? Anyway, but so when I made it there, I did a couple more races, and I had to ask myself, because I wasn't improving. I was actually kind of regressing a bit. And I was like, I had to ask myself, do I really want to stay in this and make it to the next level? Or do I want to pivot into something new? And over time, I realized that, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to, I did everything that I wanted to in that, but it took a lot of reflection, because we have to be careful with this, because if we set big goals for ourselves, if we say something like, I want to make it to Kona, or I want to become a black belt, and we convince ourselves early at every plateau that we've just had enough, well, then we're never going to elevate to our level. So we just have to be, that's where it's like that careful, and I don't quite know what the answer to that is, but that reflection, it's important. My instinct tells me that we should keep trying to pursue our dreams with passion, 5% at a time, as long as we continue to get filled up by it, and as long as it's not affecting us negatively or causing us to burn out. As long as we're experiencing growth, we should always lean into something that helps us grow.
Yeah, I think that's a whole episode in itself, is the reasons why that happens, the burnout or whatever it is. And in jiu-jitsu, I can speak to, there's this thing called blue belt blues. And I think, I've obviously not experienced it, but I have spoken to many who have, and who have broken through it. And essentially it's this idea that you spend, I don't know, the average 3, maybe 4 years as a white belt or something to that effect. I mean, you can do it faster. I totally get it. But I'm looking at, 2 to 3 years as a white belt is what I anticipate. And you get your blue belt, and then you're the blue belt for another like 4 years or something to that effect, to then get your purple. So there's like all of this work, and you leveled up, you got a blue belt, a colored belt, and then you're starting all over again. And that's a long journey. So there's a need to, I'm not trying to shit on P90X, but what they do right.
I am, by the way. I don't know.
I'll explain why I'm not trying to shit on them, because they do offer you a way to move your body, and that's admirable. Yeah. You just have to have wisdom around that to say that this program isn't going to be the thing that saves my life, but it gets you moving. Then I'm all for it. But just keep looking for other things, because these types, and this is the reason why, is Ryan Gosling. He had done a series of movies where he's pretty ripped in these movies. And so for the role, he had to get ripped. He had a trainer and a nutritionist and worked out. And he had this quote that said, it's kind of like owning a dog, like a puppy. I mean, I feed these things, I walk, I work them out, but they don't really do anything. They're just there. And that to me is the problem with my experience with P90X. Is I grew muscles in P90X, but they were just there. What was I doing with them? And so the shift in me was, well, in triathlon, I'm clearly using my aerobic engine. Right. In jiu-jitsu, I build muscle for a reason. It helps me. Like, strength does matter. Isometric strength specifically. So there is a reason that we want to, train. So if I lift weights now, it's for a purpose. I'm building strength. If I have more muscle, I'm more durable. My skeleton can hold together much better if you have muscle around, so there's a purpose, there's a reason. And so to what you were saying is, I think that's why it's important that for me, unless you really have your why being, I want to be a bodybuilder, or a fitness model, I don't know. If that's not it, there's got to be a deeper reason than looks, because when I don't know, in my 50s, I don't anticipate to have the same physique that I do now.
Right. Yeah.
At a certain point, that is going to go away. And underneath all of that superficial is going to be a gapping void. And I'm not going to see it coming. And I'm going to fight to try and keep some of it. And I'll do anything I can to get it, because that's how I got my significance. But if I'm training and I'm competitive, even if I'm carrying a little bit extra weight and I can still be competitive, I still have that connection to what I'm doing. It's not the physical vehicle. This is the driver. This is the vehicle, but this is the driver. And that's something that the mind is so important to. So we have to find ways that stimulate the mind in the process of stimulating the way we move our bodies. And I think that's why those 90-day programs burn you out, but they give you a taste. Hopefully it's getting you in the door. And then it's the wisdom of leaving. It's why we left triathlon. And it's not that we will never do a triathlon, but we had to make a conscious decision to pivot to something new.
Right. Right.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. It's a good point regarding the P90X. It does get you moving your body. There is something noble about that. I mean, and if people are in their homes and things like that, I still use elements of Ab Ripper X today. I mean, the ab workouts are great. So and they take like 5 minutes and they're fantastic. So I'm still doing the same thing and they work.
Doing a V sit up. Oh, curse you, Tony.
Right. Totally. You and your stupid jokes. Yeah, no, no, so there's elements of it, and I give it a lot of shit because ultimately, I mean, it's just like, why do I have a towel on my pull-up bar and I'm trying to do this weird, that's just stupid. Just do a pull-up. Anyway, and I'll just stop. But I think, to that point, I think you're mentioning something. I think that with the Ryan Gosling example, it's like, okay, well, he had movies to do, so he had whatever millions of dollars of paychecks coming in to and so there was a huge incentive for him there. There was a finish line for him to say, I got to look ripped for this movie. Mm-hmm. Millions of people are going to watch me, and oh yes, and to your point about wanting to get the physical results, like that is never a good motivation to have this to have the idea of I want to look good. I want to look at myself in the mirror and look good, regardless of how much you work out. Let me tell this: if you're not going to work on this first, and I'm pointing to my brain if you're just listening, which is kind of gross because I'm opening my cranium and pointing to it.
super graphic. I'll be blurring it out in post.
Glad you're not watching YouTube, by the way. Anyway, but if you're not changing what's up here first, then no matter what you do, you will not be satisfied. That's why we get into the diet culture. That's why we get into these toxic eating disorders and things like that, is because we're trying hard to hit a standard that we will never hit, because our brain skews what we look like and will never beat and unless we work on that, we won't be good enough on that. That's why we have to have something specific, some SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound that we can go after that is meaningful to us. It could be an Ironman finish line, and it could be this, but it gives us the opportunity. When we do that, we're pursuing something that's bigger than ourselves, something we never thought possible. That equips us mentally to feel like we're enough. Then we transcend that desire to look a certain way,
Yeah. The thing I went through, and the reason that I'm harping on this is one of the biggest reasons why we don't start something new. We come up with a lot of stories. We're really creative in explaining why we won't do it. I can tell you, I had one of my reasons was I had a TBI in the military, some brain injury from an accident and from some explosions. And so combat sports were what I wanted to do, but too many knocks to the noggin could be really bad for me. It's not like a simple concussion type thing. I could really set myself back from the years that I've dedicated to healing that part of my life. And that's a risk. one that my wife was worried about too. So I did a keto for like a month, and the throws in there and certain flowing things, I was getting dizzy because for some reason, either I was doing it wrong, or I don't know if it was the nature of it. I mean, that's a pure art, right? Like it's not teaching you really self-defense things, but it was really beautiful. And I thought that was kind of cool. But my brain couldn't take it. Like I walked home from class, like dizzy. And so I had to stop it. And so I was afraid and told myself I can't do jujitsu because that's going to be worse. In fact, it's not been worse, but I do have that boundary that says if I do get too many knocks to the head and I start to have this symptom, I have to step away from it. And I am really trying to do everything I can to have that never happen, because I do not want it to be taken away, but I am aware that it could be. I thought Iron Man was going to be it for me, but that got taken away because it's just not right for my body. It's not right for my time frame, like what I have to give for time to it. So I had to be aware of that and step away from it. But it's the mind. It's really the story you tell yourself and the excuses that you make. And one of the things that helped me shift, this is really hard to do because I have body image issues. I think every one of us does. Yeah. It's just on a spectrum of how severe. So please understand that what works for me is not going to work for everybody in anything I say, which is, you wish, hey, this worked for me, so it's going to be my way to heal the masses. Just has not been the case over the 10, 12 years I've been trying to do this.
Right.
So I went to the mirror and I told myself, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And stared at myself. And when I did that, what my mind did is it scanned my face for the imperfections to prove why I didn't love myself. I would look at the pimples. I would look at I don't know if it's rosacea or whatever's going on with my nose. I would look at the wrinkle. Whatever it was, or if I had my shirt off, it would be something on my chest or whatever. I would immediately go to the reasons why I shouldn't love myself, why I wasn't beautiful, why I wasn't worth it. But over time, I spent time doing that and not stopping my eye from wandering to those spots. And then I would spend the whole meditation staring at that spot, saying, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And eventually, after a month of doing that, I started to cry because I felt this transformation of just embracing my imperfections, embracing the flaws. And please, this isn't like, I'm not trying to say like one person has it better than another person. Someone's pretty, someone's ugly, whatever. It's all about what you think about yourself. That's what matters most. I mean, it doesn't matter who thinks what about me. It's what I think about myself that carries confidence or carries insecurity into every situation I'm in. So the fact that I felt less than, but then in staring at my less than and loving it, there was a freedom, because it was easy to love the stuff about myself that I loved already, or that I was like proud of.
Right.
It's only the things that are lacking in our mind that disallow us from loving ourselves and from starting something new. Because if you don't love yourself, if you don't think you're worth it, why would you ever take a risk and start something new, especially something as vulnerable and difficult as a sport or something in the physical world where you're not behind a screen?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a mic drop moment there. I mean, for me, I feel the same way you do as far as that body image piece it's a killer. I always, I've always looked at myself in that same way of just like being very critical. Oh, look at how my mouth moves when I talk.
Yes.
Listen to how I sound. Isn't that weird? Like, why is my nose crooked? Why do I have this line down it that makes it look like a penis? It's like, come on.
Oh my God, it does.
I know. Now you'll never unsee it, will you? Everybody listening, look at my penis.
And I love it.
It's gonna be blurred out from here on out. It's like too much. Yeah. But like, but like I was at an event like not long ago, and somebody said, wow, I'm loving the silver fox thing you got going on. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's, nature's way of telling me I'm going to be, good looking at 50. So how about that?
Hey, that's not so bad. That's not too shabby. I did remember those face changers where it ages you 40 years or whatever.
Oh yeah.
On the phone. I was like, please let me look at that at 60. I want to be that guy at 65. I was like Harrison Ford or something. And I'm like, I can deal that. So I'm like, I'm holding this app to deliver that. I don't know if it is.
But yeah, sue the app when you turn 65 for sure.
You
Because
gave me
we know
such hope.
all those apps will be around in 30 years too anyway. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, getting started, man. Yeah, I mean it's tough. That first step is always hard in getting started with something new. And I mean, because we want to, we going from 0 to 1, meaning like that idea of turning this ethereal idea into some kind of action is always difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's like pushing a car, right? When you need to push a dead car, what is the hardest part about pushing the car? When you start pushing the car.
First push.
Yeah. But then once you do, as long as you keep pushing, it's just making sure that it's going in the right direction.
Yeah. First 2 steps, make sure it's not on park, and make sure the person sitting in the driver's seat lets off the brake, because I've had that happen too. So this is what we're talking about. That is getting your mind right to take a step. But if your mind's not right, it's like your foot's on the brake and you're never going to move that car.
Hang on. Let me take a note really quick. You just got to take some notes on that. Make sure do not have foot on brake while pushing car. Okay, good.
If you're going to jumpstart your car, make sure the other car it can start.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of follow me for more tips and and mechanics.
I remember getting super intimidated when I was in college because I had a clutch. I had a shift, a manual car, and I had to get it. I had to pop the clutch at one point. I had no clue what I was doing, and the guy who was like AAA trying to help me, poor dude, was just trying to push the car, and I was trying to figure out how to. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He's like, put it on the clutch, just like pump it and then go. And I couldn't figure out. Finally, I got it, and then it was like, okay, I'm never going to forget this. Yeah, I couldn't pop clutch today. I haven't driven a stick shift in years.
But that's a real fear, though, right? Like, I think what we're talking about, the starting specifically, is I got to say, it's pretty damn near always fear, and it just manifests a certain way. So it's irrational or it's rational, and I've had people who have had cancer and different things, and that was like 15 years ago or whatever, and so they're still afraid to start something because of that time in their life. They have hypochondria, and so that's like anxiety, that's fear. And if I go do this where there's germs, and it doesn't matter how clean the environment is or whatever, like I know I'm going to get, my immune system is weak and I'm going to get sick again. That's very real. But the other fact is, if you want something, you have to take all of those fears, all of those limitations, and you have to put them down and say what's real, what's not. And then the ones that are real, you have to figure out, well, how do I mitigate them?
Right.
And the way that you mitigate some of these fears, or the way I did, is going to 3 different gyms and looking at them. I went and all of them were clean. So there was no fear of that being an element. And then it became culture. The people in the gym. Who did I get along with? What energy did I enjoy? And it's not that one was bad and one was good. It's one was good for me.
Yeah.
That's why there's so many different gyms. And that's why I'm glad that I went to 3. And if you're at one, you can always leave. And before you quit completely, go to another one just to see if it's different, because it will be. It's a fact. So the gym I'm at now, I didn't go to. I was absolutely not going to go to it because there was a recommendation from my neighbor, and they said the top gym is Freeform. This is a highly competitive gym, and I heard that and I was like, no, thank you. I'm not trying to get in that mess, so then I went to the next 2. Ultimately Freeform, I was like, you know what? I got a taste at these other gyms that I enjoyed, and I felt like I could be good at this. And then I want to be better. So maybe I'll check out Freeform. And I went to it, and I didn't know what I wanted until I walked into that gym, and everything that I didn't know I was missing from the other gyms came into focus, because all the things that I wanted that they weren't doing were being done at Freeform. So you don't know. You have no clue until you step into the gym, until you step in the door and just feel it. That's the only way you know. So if you intellectualize anything in life without going into the arena, you're never going to know, and you won't even understand. All of your preparation is great, but it means nothing until you step in and onto the mats and then see for yourself.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, these people are great. These people suck. oh, I love the mentality here, and oh, they're joking, and there's free. This is my place. You
Right.
can't put that on a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think that the fear element is such a big part of that. And I would actually even argue, because we talk a lot about, well, people are afraid of failure. And I think that's true to some extent. People are afraid of the humiliation, the shame of failure, or the perceived shame, whatever. That's not really true. We learn from failure. But I actually think it's bigger than that. I don't think people are necessarily afraid of failure. I think they're more afraid of success. And here's why. Because when you succeed, in order to succeed, I think people are relieved a lot of times when they fail, because in order to succeed, you have to kill off a large piece of yourself, of who you once were. It's kind of like we have developed our identity around what makes us comfortable. And in order to grow, we have to break out of that comfort zone. So and there's a great new book by Benjamin Hardy, who is an organizational psychologist, and he wrote it with Dan Sullivan, who's a strategic coach. It's called 10x is easier than 2x, which is pretty powerful. So 2x thinking says that, we operate in this 80% of who we are and 20% of making the change of who we want to be. But the argument is that's like 2x thinking will grow something while we keep 80% of us the same. But in order to go that huge next step, we have to actually change 80% of ourselves. And that's a big step, because I don't know about you, Eric, but when I think about that, when I think about letting go of 80% of myself, that's hard to let go of. I'm scared of that.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of failing when going forward. I'm afraid of letting go of who I am to become the better thing.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to transform. And I think a lot of people may not recognize that piece of it. And that's why they don't get started, is because they're afraid of letting go of even just a small part of who they are, because that might be the discomfort that they know. They don't want to lean into discomfort that they don't know.
I agree. That is a huge part of it, because there's an expression that's going to be a more fleshed out concept later. Pressure is a privilege. There is absolutely beauty in that statement, and a lot of what you're talking about is you have to let go of the person you were to then take on this pressure of growth and privilege. That is a privilege, because not everyone has it, because not everyone steps into that arena. But there is a lot of reality that I've learned in, letting go of certain habits. And I'm not here to tell you what you should eat and how you should spend your time. But I am going to say this. We usually, if we're not happy, we're not spending our time in a way that's optimal for us, and we're not feeding ourselves what is optimal for us, whether that's incredibly restrictive or just careless. I hate that. That was one of my biggest struggles, is just being hyper focused on nutrition, or just not even caring at all. But there's a middle ground where I can enjoy food, but I'm not so obsessed where I have to, drop 20 pounds so I can get to this weight class, or I'm going to be super competitive, but I'm not going to be happy. Right now, 185 to 195 is where I live, and I'm happy there, because it doesn't take much effort for me. And so I'm good, but it did change. There were certain things about me in that arena that changed, but I was happy to make those changes. I used to spend a lot of time playing video games, but I felt when I had something in my life that was worth pursuing and gave me great sense of value, I just unintentionally stopped playing games. And if I didn't have this in my life, I would feel like I was missing out on the new God of War or the new Assassin's Creed or whatever thing I was playing. And I need to get up in the morning and I need to play the game. And I'm going to miss that if I'm successful. But then I realized accidentally that I became successful in other areas. And I love those other areas that I completely forgot to play and finish the games I had started.
Yeah.
And it's not that I need to reclaim that part of my life. It's just, oh, cool. When you replace something with something that you love equally, but it's creating positivity in your life, it's creating forward momentum and confidence and health, and it replaces something that maybe was just giving you security and safety and entertainment, and you didn't have to try and cut cold turkey and vilify this thing and saying, oh, this is an evil waste of time and you're pathetic, you're not even a man if you play video games, or you're eating freaking pizza, or I don't know, whatever people want to say like, hell, I eat oatmeal and I've found out that's horrible for you too. And I'm like, Jesus, I can't win. I'm doing the best that I can. Apparently that's going to rot my gut too. And I thought it was just getting off of sugar. I'm like, what do you want from me, people? And so like, I mean, it's like you have to listen to your body and have autonomy over your life and not vilify anything you're doing, but just try to find space to make small pivots. And that's also starting. Yeah. It seems small, but it is so huge to not overwhelm yourself with these big, drastic life changes. Everything can't be a midlife crisis.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Just 5% at a time. That's all you need. 5% beyond your comfort zone at a time. That's all you need. But, and then resolve. If you want to get started, just start with that. Just start with one step. And that's it. Step out into the discomfort.
Yeah, I want to say one thing before we close. And the last topic is that failure. I wanted to circle back to something you shared about popping the clutch and that feeling of shame. I feel that in jiu-jitsu where I get on the mats and I sometimes embarrass myself in the first starting, and I'd go home like gripping the steering wheel like, idiot. And I'm like, nobody cared. It's my third class. It's not like people were like, oh, geez, this kid's going nowhere. I mean, this old man, sorry, this silver assassin is going nowhere. And that wasn't the case, but I felt that and felt embarrassed and shame, and nobody, only I felt it. No one made me feel that way. It was just me. But there is beauty in it now when you take away the intensity of it, and that failure is good when you're seen by your coach not doing something perfect. There's actual growth that occurs in there because you're made aware, and it's an intense feeling. Like that intensity, we read it as shame, but if we can have confidence in self, it's not shame, it's realization.
Yeah.
And it's like that, if we're wired for that, if someone punches us in the face, that hurts, and we're not going to let them do that again. And if we say like, oh, I'm so horrible, I'm embarrassed, I'm pathetic because I got punched in the face, that's not the energy. It's I got to figure out how not, I got choked out and it hurt, and I finally can swallow after a week and a half or whatever it's been. I don't want that to ever happen again. Did I wallow in it? No, but I'm like, I got to figure out how to make it through that never happens to me again. And I think there's a lot of value in that failure with the right mindset.
100%.
But what do I know? I'm just a 39-year-old white belt.
And I'm a 43-year-old guy anyway, I'm just a 43-year-old guy. His brain doesn't work quite as well anymore. I'm 44 tomorrow. I'll be 44 when this.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess when this comes out, you'll already be 44. That's like time travel.
Yeah, I know it is. I wonder how my 44th birthday went.
I don't know. How do you think?
I should tell myself right now, it went great.
Never one to not go deep. Adam Hill.
Take that, Elon Musk. I can already travel through time.
Eat it. Well, as always, thanks for joining us. And again, if you want to learn more about what Adam is doing, where can our listeners go and catch up on some of the stuff you're doing?
Oh, interesting you ask, because I have my own podcast called Flow Over Fear. New episodes drop Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Interviews and little tips on how you can rise above fear to realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. Heck yeah.
I love that. Realizing your ultimate potential in leadership and life. That's really resonance. And that's one of the reasons this show has synergy with yours. Is it's really all about that and finding your path, and getting started is the starting point of any of those paths. And guess what? If you don't like it, you gave it a crack, I would just still recommend trying it in one other gym, one other place, and not letting that one obstacle be the thing that throws you off and writes the story saying this isn't for me, because I did it with ultra marathon. I think it isn't for me, but I didn't set myself up to really understand. But give yourself a shot. I think I'm meant to be a grappler. These 5 to 10 minute rounds, not these 14-hour expeditions. Really, I enjoy the hell out of it. So find what you love. Find the ways that you love to move your body, and then just put yourself in a position to experience that growth. And you don't have to answer to anyone why it is or isn't endurance sport, why it's fighting, why it's kayaking. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just letting your curiosity take you down a path and finding out.
Amen.
So until next time, journey well, my friends. And as always, bye.